It was an ordinary morning when everything started. I had just set the breakfast table, a normal routine I had become accustomed to. But as my husband walked into the kitchen, I immediately noticed something was wrong. His face was pale, almost ghostly, his skin slick with a sheen of sweat. He didn't even look at me as he sat down at the table, his hands trembling as he reached for his coffee cup. I watched in silence as his hand shook so violently, the cup almost slipping from his grasp. "Are you okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, though inside, something wasn't right. "You look terrible. Did you sleep well last night?" He didn't meet my gaze. He stared at his cup as if he were afraid of what he might say next. His voice was quiet when he spoke, but there was an edge to it, something I'd never heard before. "I don't know," he replied. "I'm not sure if I was sleeping or if I was awake. Have you ever had a dream that felt so real you weren't sure if it was a dream or something else?" His words hung in the air, and a shiver ran down my spine. His eyes were wide, haunted. I had never seen him so terrified. He paused, his face twisted, no confusion, as though he couldn't quite grasp the truth of what had happened. Then, as if drawn to a memory he didn't want to relive, he spoke again. "Last night, I had one of those dreams," he said, his voice trembling. "But it was different. It felt like something else entirely. I woke up in a cold sweat. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my breathing was shallow. I thought I was still asleep. I went to the bathroom to drink some water, but when I looked up, he trailed off, his eyes widening. He swallowed hard, as if the words he was about to say would be too much to bear. The ceiling," he continued, "wasn't there. Instead, I was looking up from a grave. The earth above me was close, pressing in, like I was lying in a coffin. I could see the edges of the grave, the dirt, the stone. There were people around the grave, standing in a circle. I didn't recognize any of them, except for one man. I felt my stomach drop. I couldn't even breathe as he continued. I was listening, but I felt like I was in a dream myself. My heart raced as I waited for him to continue, my mind reeling with what he had just said. "The man who was standing over me," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "looked exactly like me. Same eyes, same face, same everything." He bent down, peered into the grave, and smiled. But it wasn't a friendly smile. It was terrifying. He said something to me, and when he did, it felt like a chill ran through my entire body. He said, "You've lived long enough. Time to let someone else live for a while." The words hung in the air like a curse. I couldn't speak. My husband, the man I loved, was telling me about a dream that seemed so real. It felt like something more than a nightmare. It felt like a warning. I stared at him, trying to process his words, but the fear in his eyes told me that he wasn't just telling me a bad dream. He was telling me something that had changed him, something that he couldn't escape. "What did you do?" I finally whispered, my voice cracking. "What happened next?" He shrugged, a hollow expression on his face. "I went back to bed, but I don't know if I fell asleep again. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for something to happen. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me." The room felt colder. The air seemed to press in around us, thick with the tension that my husband's words had created. I didn't know what to say. How could I make sense of this? How could I fix it? The next morning, my husband came downstairs looking worse than ever. His hair was a mess, his face was sunken, and there was an odd, vacant look in his eyes. I could see the exhaustion in his face, but it was more than just physical. It was as though the dream had drained him of everything. "I had the same dream again," he said, his voice barely audible. His hands trembled as he reached for his coffee. It was exactly the same. The man, the grave, everything. His words sent a jolt through me. How could something so vivid, so terrifying, repeat itself every night? The look in his eyes told me that this wasn't just a nightmare. It was something far darker. The days passed, and the cycle continued. Each night, the dream returned, and each morning, my husband looked worse than the day before. He had become a shell of himself, consumed by something I couldn't understand. His face grew grayer, his eyes more hollow. He seemed to be withering away before my eyes, and no matter what I said or did, nothing could stop it. "I can't take this anymore," he would say, his voice trembling. "I'm losing my mind. I don't know what's real anymore." It was heartbreaking to watch him unravel like this. I knew I had to do something. I suggested seeing a psychologist, someone who could help him make sense of it all, but he was too afraid, too lost in the grip of the dream. On Saturday morning, my husband woke up much later than usual. When he came downstairs, I was stunned. He looked better. His face had color again. His eyes weren't bloodshot. He seemed almost normal, but there was something unsettling about it. "Did you have that dream again last night?" I asked, unable to hide my concern. He looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in his eyes, a smile that didn't reach his lips. But then, he spoke in a calm, almost detached voice. "What dream?" he said, as if he hadn't experienced anything out of the ordinary. "I don't know what you're talking about." His casual tone was so out of place, so unsettling, that I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It was the smile. It was wrong. There was something in his smile that I couldn't place. It was like he wasn't the same person anymore. It was as if the man I had loved was gone, replaced by someone else entirely. For the rest of the day, he seemed fine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us, lurking just out of sight. That night, I decided to stay awake. I had to know the truth. What was really going on with him? Around 2 a.m., I heard him stir. His breathing had become erratic, his body twitching uncontrollably. I sat up in bed, my heart racing as I watched him. "Are you okay?" I whispered, but he didn't respond. His eyes snapped open, wide with terror. "I'm not sure if I'm awake," he murmured, his voice shaking. "He's here. He's back." I felt my blood run cold. It was the same man, the one who had haunted his dreams. He wasn't just a figment of his imagination. He was real, and he was in the room with us. From that night on, the nightmares seemed to invade every waking moment. It was as if the boundary between dream and reality had dissolved. My husband would wake up in a cold sweat, gasping for breath, his eyes wide with fear. But this time, it wasn't just the dream that terrified him, it was the man, the dark figure who had taken root in his mind. "He's in the room," my husband whispered one night, his voice barely a breath. "He's always here now, watching me, watching us." The more I tried to make sense of it, the more I realized this wasn't just a series of bad dreams. This was something far deeper, something far more sinister. The man in the dream wasn't just a figment of his imagination. He was something else entirely, something that had crossed over into the waking world. I could see it in my husband's eyes. He was losing himself. I needed to figure out what was happening, but each answer led to more questions. The deeper I dug, the darker it became. One evening, I found my husband staring at himself in the mirror. His eyes were wide with fear, his mouth trembling. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. "What's wrong?" I asked, stepping closer to him. He didn't respond at first, But then, slowly, he turned to me, his face pale and drawn. "He's in the mirror," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He's watching me." I couldn't take it anymore. My husband was slipping away, and I had to find out what was happening to him. "What's going on?" I demanded. "Tell me the truth. What is this man? Why is he after you?" He stared at me, his eyes full of terror, as if he was afraid of saying too much. "I don't know anymore," he whispered. "I don't know what's real." That night, I stayed awake, listening to my husband's restless breathing. At some point, I heard him mumbling in his sleep, his voice filled with fear. I leaned closer, straining to hear the words. "He's here," he murmured, his voice shaky. "He's coming for you." I backed away, my heart racing. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The nightmare wasn't just a dream, it was real, and it had found a way into our world. The next morning, my husband was gone. His clothes were still in the closet, his things untouched. The only thing left was a lingering sense of dread. I walked into the living room, and there, in the mirror, was the man, the one who had haunted my husband's dreams. He was smiling, but it wasn't the smile of a man. It was something far darker. And for the first time, I realized that the nightmare was only just beginning.